Ooh. Hey, 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 welcome back to another episode of Unapologetically Black, Never Broken, Always Empowered. I am your host, Brittany, joined by my co hosts, Rich and Brad. What's up? How you guys feeling?
Doing all right. What's going on, folks?
I got no complaints over here. What's happening with y'all?
All right. We are also being joined by our guest, Kim Rhim. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you guys.
Sorry, that's really loud.
Oh wow.
Uh, awesome. So we always start every episode with a mental health check-in. So we will start with you, Kim. How are you feeling? How's your week been?
Week has been incredibly busy, but they all have been of late. And in terms of a health and wellness, I need to take care of myself more.
Don't we all? That's the truth. Rich, how you feeling? How's your week going?
You know, no cabin fever yet.
Oh yeah. How's
Cleaning,
it stay-at-home dad life?
chilling,
Oh yeah.
taking kids to school, picking them up. Life is life and pretty easy. I'm gonna say that.
He keeps saying that,
It's
honestly.
pretty easy. Hey, I've done both. I've worked all day. I'm home all day.
I'm home.
I don't see what the complaint is about. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Brad, how about you?
I'm good. I
Before he
am
digs his hole.
right, exactly. Exactly. I'm Rona free. So
Yay,
I'm back to
officially.
I'm back to 100%. I was in Wisconsin over the weekend for work, and I think I've told you guys before I have a goal. I want to get my feet on the soil of every state before I die. So Wisconsin is officially off the list.
Mm.
Nice.
And man, it was a nice little town. I went to Madison, the capital.
Okay.
Wasn't a whole lot of us there.
I
That really is.
imagine.
When you
It,
get
it
past the South and you're in that mid part, mid east, midwest, it don't matter if you're in the middle. It's not many of us there. Uh,
I mean, I legit. I mean, now granted, I was only there for the weekend, and I really just frequented like one place for work. Well,
Mhm.
two if you consider my hotel room. Um, and I think I may have seen a total of outside of the airport because all bets are off in the airport, right?
Yeah.
I,
right.
I think outside of the confines of the airport, I may have seen 10 black people out
Count
of
on
like
your hands.
out of like 1,000 faces. You know what I'm saying?
You live in Ohio. It's
He lives in Michigan, and
Michigan, Ohio, same thing.
it's different. It's
But,
not.
but what I can say is, when we start talking about the training source, we do nominate youth for Posse scholarships, and University of Wisconsin at Madison is a Posse school. And we have a graduate, in fact, who's now on our board of directors, who's a graduate of University of Wisconsin at Madison, and he pledged Q there, and went to about 10 countries, and he was a member of 100 Black men there. So he was very active and found 100 Black men at least.
They existed.
That might have
Very
been
true. Exactly.
it. It might be 102 this past weekend with me
Exactly.
being there.
Mhm.
That's hilarious.
No, that's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, that really is. For
Mhm.
me, my weekend, everything's been pretty. It's been we've been getting used to Jamal's new schedule. So he's now working two jobs, working from 7:30. He's at work now, 8:30, 9:30 until about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Time out. Do I need to send y'all my address? What's
Oh, for
happening
the
with that?
cookies.
What's up with
I
that?
mean, you can send us your address. We're sending some to my sister, so we're already
Okay.
hitting the post office. Let me know.
You
They
let
already
me
have
know.
my address, yet I
We
haven't received cookies.
we haven't sent any. We
Just
haven't.
Hey,
They're just sitting
pointing
here,
that.
honestly. And he keeps bringing home boxes of cookies, and I had to sit down and tell him, I was like, babe, I am overwhelmed. I make it my duty to ensure that our home is clean every day. I try to make sure when you come home from work, you have a place to reset. But I have stacks of cookies now, and I don't know
Yeah,
what to
tell them to
do with
stop bringing
them.
cookies
I
home.
don't know where to go
well, and like, let me be a good friend.
and
I'll,
help
I'll,
help
I'll
out.
yeah, just send that on my way. I
I
go,
got
look,
so
you,
many
you,
cookies.
you met me a few weeks ago. You seen I got plenty of storage over here.
Tell that man to
Put them
stop bringing
away.
cookies home.
Yeah, it's been a mission. I mean, of trying to just not eat them, stay focused, like do my little home workouts, and then take a piece, because I earned it. It's been stressful. But yeah, overall, we've been good over here. Just getting ready for Snuggles' birthday. So we're excited. And then he knows it's his birthday. So every day, is it my Mario birthday, mommy? No, Ryan, not yet. So that's it. But today's episode is about nonprofits. And all month, we've just been talking about different financial literacy topics, just ways to build wealth within your community, within your families, and just kind of spreading that knowledge amongst the Black community. So we have my lovely boss, the executive director of the Training Source, with us today. So welcome once again. And I'll just have you start off by introducing yourself and what the Training Source is and what you do.
Okay. So again, I'm Kim Rhim. I'm the founder and executive director of the Training Source. We are a nonprofit headquartered in Seat Pleasant, Maryland. And I did not ever intend to start a nonprofit organization, but was working at IBM, which was my dream job when I finished graduate school. And I had been there about 10 years in 1993 when IBM laid off 100,000 people in a single day, which was 25% of our workforce. And while I wasn't one of the people who got laid off that day, I saw the devastation of people who did. And a large margin of the people in Bethesda, Maryland, who got laid off looked like me. And I saw the devastation of those who did, started helping them write resumes, develop job search strategies, but most importantly, a sense of hope that this too shall pass, that I can find out what my dreams used to be and get back on a path of prosperity. And the more that I did that, the more I knew that was my gift, and I wanted to do that the rest of my life. My husband thought I'd lost my mind, and we had kids who were 1 and 5. And when I said I want to quit my job and launch a business to help the unemployed transition back to work, he was not in the boat with me at first. But when I convinced him that I really thought the Lord was telling me to do this, he finally got in the boat with me. And I left IBM, took the buyout package, and launched this nonprofit to see if that's what I had. 29 years later, we are still here. We have gotten lots of accolades. As a matter of fact, we are one of a few Standards for Excellence accredited nonprofits. We are GuideStar Platinum rated. We have expanded in a lot of different ways, but we still do job training for the unemployed. We now do youth leadership, college and career planning. We do community social support services, helping people apply for food stamps, cash assistance, energy assistance. We give away professional clothing for job seekers. We are now a Comcast Lift Zone where people can come use our free Wi-Fi 24/7. If we're open, they can come in and use our technology to apply for jobs, to look for resources, whatever. If we're closed, they can stand outside and check email on their phones or whatever. We work with employers to fill their vacant positions as well as to train their existing staff. We work with survivors of domestic violence to connect them with resources or to help them build wealth so they can transition to safety and security for themselves and their families. We work with people who are transitioning from prison to gainful employment so that they can not suffer from recidivism and go back into the prison system. So whatever we can do to help people, that's what we do. Our mantra is we develop people, not just skills.
Oh man! First off, I would like to say thank you. For all that you do, especially in that area.
That's why I need to take better care of myself. I'm busy.
Definitely need your flowers now.
So
absolutely. Wow, you can smell them.
One question that I had was
good luck. Where to begin?
I know because you explained so much, but let's start here. How did you start the nonprofit?
Okay, so and that's a very good question, because when I started it, I started it as really a for-profit was my thinking that it was going to be a for-profit, because everything I had ever done with a nonprofit had been voluntary. So I thought at that time, nonprofits never made money. They were only just people who got together and volunteered. And as I mentioned, I had a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, and eventually knew I was going to have to make money. So to be honest, as I left IBM, two things happened that were, first of all, I do believe still that God wanted me to do this. And I believe that every good thing that happens is him telling me he's pleased with what I'm doing. So two good things happened. One was IBM had a fire sale because they had laid off so many people. So they opened up a warehouse and they were selling things like desks and computers and whiteboards and things. And so most people, pulled up in their car and bought a desk and bought a computer. I pulled up in a U-Haul with a page full of labels, pre-printed labels, and started labeling whiteboards and labeling desks and labeling computers. And so they were like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to start a school. I'm going to help
nothing.
I got to help my people. And so they said, well, is it a nonprofit? And I was like, no, because my husband said, I got to make some money. One of these days I got to get a salary. And they were like, well, if it's a nonprofit, then we can give you this stuff. You don't even have to pay us. And so I was like, what are you talking about? And they said, nonprofits, we donate to nonprofits. And so if you're helping people who don't have jobs, then you're not going to charge them. You can have this stuff. And I was like, then it's a nonprofit.
Just like that, quicker than a Thanos snap.
Just like that, it was a nonprofit. And so my whole U-Haul of furniture and fixtures was free. And so my first 15 computers, I didn't buy a whiteboard until 2022. 2022 was the first time I bought a whiteboard.
Wow. 29 years later.
Years old. 29 years later was the first time I bought a new whiteboard. So all of that stuff was given to us. The other thing was my network had a lot of people that were used to nonprofits. So my husband was a consultant who designed like HR systems and retirement plans for nonprofits. My daughter's godmother was in finance and administration for nonprofits. And so once I knew now that I wanted it to be a nonprofit, I had a network that could help me do the paperwork and structure to get it done right.
Okay.
And so that was a benefit. I actually took a class that was offered by our Economic Development Corporation and got an award from the class that was called, I think it was called Support to Achieve Real Success STARS, but that's definitely what my award was called. But in the class, it was really like to help businesses get started. And so they said, well, where are you going to do this business? And so I don't know if all of you are from the Prince George's County area, but I lived in Springdale, which is right near Route 50, right near the Beltway, and our traffic is horrible. And I had commuted to Bethesda, which was like a nightmare for 10 years. And I said, I'm going to make it right near Forbes Boulevard. And I said, I want to be able to ride my bike. I don't even want to have to get on the Beltway. And they were like, okay, so how many people in your neighborhood are poor and unemployed? And I was like, I don't know too many. And they were like, how many buses go through your neighborhood? And I was like, I haven't seen any. And they said, so you want to ride your bike, but how many of your customers are going to be able to get to you? That was some of the best, advice. What they were telling me was, that's the dumbest thing we ever heard, but they were helping. They will help making me say it, that, you need to take your business with people who need your businesses. Right. So you really need to learn how to do demographic studies. And so it's not about me being convenient, it being convenient for me. It needs to be convenient to the people who need it. So with that information, I learned about the 20743 zip code, which is where the neediest people are in our county. And that's right walking distance to a subway station and all of that. And that's where we've been since the inception of the organization, is within walking distance of 20743. So there's so much to learn about, where to be and how to reach your target population and all of that. So, with that, I ended up getting an award. It's one of the 5 groups in that class that would probably make it. And again, 29 years later, we are still here. And nonprofit was definitely the way to go. And one of the things Brittany and I were talking about is, when you talk about for-profit versus nonprofit, those are some of the questions you have to ask yourself: is who are you serving, and do they have the ability to pay? And if they can't pay, you need to be a nonprofit, because you have to raise the money in order to be able to serve them. And nonprofits can definitely make a profit. As a matter of fact, you want to hope that you make a profit, because that's your rainy day fund. And if you want to be a for-profit, if your constituents can afford to pay you what it costs to operate the business.
So I guess with that being said, how does a nonprofit make profit legally? I want nobody out there be trying to
Exactly.
stuff.
Exactly. And I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people think all you have to do is get the paperwork and the money's going to fall from heaven. It's hard work. It's very, very hard work. There are certain ways that nonprofits can make money. One way, and the way that we do it the most, is we write a lot of proposals and get grants and contracts. And a lot of people think that's the easiest way. That's the hardest way. That means, when people say, I don't want any bosses, I got a million bosses, because for every grant and contract, you have to do things the way they tell you to do it. So it's an administrative burden. I have a lot of reports to write, a lot of deadlines to meet, and a lot of requirements to meet. So if we say we're going to train 60 people and put 80% of them to work, we have to do that. If we say we're going to serve 60 youth and put 80% of them in college, we have to do that. So those are when you have grants and contracts, you have to say what you're going to do and you have to do it, or you lose those contracts. You can have events. You can have, whatever it might be. You can have parties. You can have auctions. You can have those, fundraising events, and you can use the funds those ways. The big thing since COVID has been the double good popcorn. I mean, if you see one more bag of popcorn, both of you look like you haven't seen
That's
those.
crazy, because I've seen so many.
Now I was going to ask you to explain what that is.
Really?
Popcorn.
Well,
it's
I think
an online fundraiser.
Let me just make sure that so that Miss Kim is clear, because she was asking if we're all in Maryland,
right?
We're in Texas, and I'm in Michigan. So maybe that's something that's happening there that we just don't know. But we would love to know.
All right,
popcorn in DC?
No, I don't even think it's in DC.
It's national.
Or I was going to say it's online.
It's definitely not in DC. It's a national
thing. It's just a fundraising thing people have been doing.
Oh, so it's something that everyone can use to kind of create fundraisers. Like, is it similar to GoFundMe?
No, it's definitely popcorn. It's a national phenomenon. I mean, it's almost at the end of its rope because everybody is doing it. But it's a fundraiser where you have 4 days to raise funds, and so you really pump it up before your 4 days before the clock starts, and you say, we're going to be raising funds for this sports event or cheerleading or the training source or whatever it might be. And you can get other people to join your fundraising team, and then it's on and popping. And so you have challenges and put up pictures and do different things to sell as much popcorn as you can. The company, Double Good, allows you to keep 50% of everything you sell. And then other people can just outright donate. The popcorn is expensive, and that's what.
So you're selling popcorn.
You're selling popcorn.
Oh, I thought that was just the name of a website.
No,
it's real
just
popcorn.
like any other
so you're selling
child fundraiser.
like Boy Scout popcorn,
like Girl Scout cookies.
Exactly, like Girl Scout cookies, right?
Yeah,
and then but you don't have to touch it. They do everything from their site. They give you the portals and everything, and then they mail the popcorn directly to the people who supported you, and then you get your check. So that's one that's been very popular during the pandemic. So the organization selling the popcorn just wait to get their money. But there have been auctions. I mean, so that's one way. Corporate contributions. There's some organizations that will just sponsor organizations. So there's another way. There are workplace giving campaigns like United Way and the Combined Federal Campaign, where people support nonprofits through payroll deductions. So there are a lot of different ways that you can fundraise, and the best thing that you can do as a nonprofit is use some of all of them, not put all of your eggs in any one basket. When COVID hit, I told you we use more grants and contracts, and so a lot of our funders changed their priorities, and so we were worried in 2020 about would we still be around in 2021, because things went to COVID relief and went to hunger, because so many people were hungry because people lost their jobs, and so workforce development wasn't the big thing anymore. And the only thing that saved us that year was the COVID relief funds, like the payroll protection program and things like that. So we actually were able to apply for some of the relief funds as well.
Oh, you're one of the legitimate people.
Exactly.
Real quick, I want to point out, just to let our viewers know, this is for educational purposes only. We're not giving out financial advice. So please do your research and do all of your own stuff before you just jump in and say, Unapologetically Black told me to go start a nonprofit and I'll make money. That's not what we're saying. Please do your research. Go ahead, Brad.
So I have a question for you, Ms. Kim, and I'm just going to call you Ms. Kim just out of pure respect, if that's all right.
Okay, you can call me Kim though.
Yeah, Brad.
My mama might not be happy with that. I'm just kidding. But so I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking about, you might see you go somewhere and they'll say, "Hey, would you like to donate $1 to St. Jude, or would you like to donate this to United Way?" Right? And then these are names that people may already know, right? And now you're in a position where you can say, if somebody says donate to the training source, they can say, for 29 years, the training source has done this and has done that and has done this and has served this community in so many ways.
Right.
What's that like on day one?
When you're brand new?
Yeah.
It's much more difficult. I'm glad you brought that up. And when you hear the St. Jude's and the, even, I mean, the large names, it's sometimes so difficult to compete against them. And it's not to say that they're not doing fantastic work, because they are. But what most people don't know is how much of that dollar actually goes to those organizations, because a lot of times a huge portion of that dollar is going to the advertising that's asking for that dollar. Whereas those grassroots organizations like ours, every dime of that dollar is really going towards the services that we're promoting. And so I always really talk about, for us, give where you live, give local. I don't know if you in Detroit, and I'm going to promise you that where you all are in Texas and Michigan, that you all have a Radio 1 network somewhere. And every Tuesday, Kathy Hughes comes on talking about Buying Black. I know she does here.
Yeah,
exactly.
I wish she does. Yep.
Exactly. So she does here. Now I want her to do that with nonprofits. Let's do this, because that's my thing is, I wish I could get her ear and say, could you do on Wednesdays support nonprofits? Because the same thing is true, that we are called the best. 29 years, we're still called the best kept secret in Prince George's County, where we are, because we can't afford to advertise. We can't, we don't have a huge marketing budget. We're not on the radio. We're not on TV. We're not on every bus that goes by. We just don't have the money for that. And when it comes to the monies that we do get by fundraising, we have to put it right into serving the people.
Right.
And so that's my answer to your question. You're going to get, there's some organizations you're going to see on television all night long if you stay up late. And that's what your dollar is really paying for, that commercial.
Yeah.
So as far as constructing your team, how big did you start off when you started? Was it just you running the streets by yourself, or was it you and then some volunteers? I know eventually they wanted to get paid, as well. So right. how did your team construct work?
So it started with me. You must have a board of directors in order to form a nonprofit, and so and you have to name them in your articles of incorporation. So in reality, when you're forming a nonprofit, you really start with a working board. So you really start with some volunteers who, in my opinion, should be people who have skills you don't have, because that's giving you some free labor, because a board cannot be paid. So, for example, if you are not a lawyer, you might want a lawyer on your board. And if you are not an accountant, you might want an accountant on your board. And if you don't know social media, you might want somebody who does know social media on your board, because that's how you're going to get some free advice on your board. And there are a lot of people who don't like boards because of the nature of a board. In reality, the board of directors, their role is to hire and evaluate the executive director to make sure that the nonprofit is adequately resourced and all of that. So some people just get panicked immediately, like, this is my baby and they can fire me. Right. But if you believe enough in the mission of what you're doing, you should never worry about getting fired. You should worry about achieving the mission.
Right.
And so my board, was willing to do some of the work to get things done. Once you start getting some funds in, or as I had to do, because I ended up having the opportunity for a contract, but no funds, I had to put my house up for collateral. So I already got my husband trusted me to quit the job. Then I had to get
now you got to put the house down for collateral.
Right. And now I got to put my house up for collateral and get a loan so that I can go get the contract.
And just to not to cut you off, just to tie back for those consistent listeners, a couple weeks ago we had Nisha J on, and we talked about I'm sorry, not Nisha J, but we talked about assets versus liabilities, right? Mm-hmm. She made her house into a liability when she refinanced it, right? And woo, all right.
Did she do the same thing? She had to put her house up for us
No, I was mixing up my guess. She was a real estate agent, but I was mixing up my episodes. We've been talking about finance all month long.
Exactly. So I had to when you believe enough in what you're doing, and I do talk about that, like when you start like a nonprofit or something like that, or any business, you got to have that stick-to-itiveness. It's not like something like you're just going to do it on a whim. I mean, you got to be all in. You got to be all in. And the first thing that rocks your world, you can't say I'm done. You got to say we fall down, but we get up. Especially with your house on the line. And exactly. So we put our house up for collateral and got a loan. And that was how we got the first contract. And then I was able to hire people. And the way our contracts went was their cost reimbursable contracts. And they said it was the best proposal we've ever seen, but we're not going to put our residents in your class. And then you go out of business halfway through the class. Right. So you have to have the money to finish the class and put them to work, and then we'll refund you for doing the work. And that's why I had to do it. And so then I was able to hire people. And so I started out with 2 people, and then I added a 3rd person. And so over the years, our staff started to grow. Once we got to the pandemic, so 20-something years in, we started to see some things with the staff that showed us that maybe we didn't need as many staff full time. That maybe everybody wasn't doing what should have been done. And when people go home, you kind of see what's live and what's Memorex. Mm-hmm. And so we're piloting a new model now, and that's having more contract employees than full-time employees. And so we'll see how that plays out.
Okay. Yes, we will, Brittany.
I
couldn't resist it.
Playing it out.
Don't fire on a day off. At least call in.
Brittany is doing quite well.
How much would someone need to start a nonprofit up front, if that's the case, or just to cover whatever overhead I might? And does personal credit take effect, or does it not matter what my personal credit look like, or things like that?
I think that it varies. It depends on what you're trying to do. I teach a class at our community college on how to start a nonprofit. And first of all, on the first night, I say, I hope some of you decide not to start a nonprofit, but rather to work at one, donate at one, volunteer at one, or go to work for one. Because again, we don't need a mentoring program on every corner. Everybody doesn't need to have their own nonprofit. No. We just need to meet a need. And the more people work together, the more we can have a bigger impact on society. So we don't all have to be having little pieces where we can make a bigger impact. And in terms of what does it take, it depends on what it is you're trying to do. I mean, if you are tutoring, you may not need a whole lot of anything. You may be able to get a lot of things offline, off the internet, download them or whatever. So what are the products that you need in order to do the business or conduct the business that you're trying to do? So that's my first thing. In terms of having people do the work, do you have to hire people, or can you get volunteers to do the work? Can you get youth to do the work who are getting community service in order to do the work? So I mean, every model is different. And so I cannot answer that with any degree of specificity, but to say you have to have a business plan and what's the best way to get the work done.
Okay.
So you had mentioned, not everyone having small pieces and starting their own nonprofits. How do you stand out amongst other nonprofits that are doing the same thing? Because I know at a lot of these different events I've been to, I look to my left, they have me right next to Employ Prince George's. I look to my right, it's someone else doing training. So, and honestly, I have not had an issue. So you have done a great job creating your legacy in this field, but how do you stand out, or how would you tell someone to stand out? What is that face, Red?
You ain't gotta suck up to her, Brittany. She already said she likes you, or you're doing good.
Let the woman ask the question.
So first of all, I do try to keep I try to know who's doing what. And I don't try to compete so much as I try to excel in my own lane. So, for example, Employee Prince George's doesn't really do training; they facilitate workforce development. So, for example, they give contracts out to other training providers. Okay, we are a training provider. And they are really under the U.S. Department of Labor, so they are part of the American Job. What is the AJS? American Job Service. That's U.S. Department of Labor. So when you take contracts from them, you have to follow those rules to the letter. And that's how we got started. As a matter of fact, that very first contract, we were under that same system. And around 2010 or so, we came from under that system because we have so many different programs that it was restrictive to us. And so we're their friend. I'm not, as a matter of fact, we still are a partner of theirs. We just don't take their funding because we don't want to be restricted with our youth programs and with our domestic violence programs and some of our other programs that will restrict how we serve other people. And so I don't see them as a competition. I see them as a partner that does things a different way. And, with some others that might do, let's say, hospitality training, we have partnered with some of them in the past. But what we do, because our niche is all about technology and the digital divide, we are always going to focus on making sure people know how to use the Microsoft Office suite. So if we were going to do hospitality training, we don't want to do housekeeping because you don't have to know how to do housekeeping to clean the rooms. So or food and beverage. So you can stay over there and do those. We're going to focus on front desk or auditing or concierge or call center or something that's going to put people on a different ramp.
So like a lot of clerical jobs.
Yep. Okay. Or something that where their ladder that they're going to climb is going to be something different.
Okay. So that was going to kind of be my next question, is the type of fields that you work with.
Yeah.
And are there any Fortune 500 companies that be like, hey, we have some spots that we'll give you for you to fill, or things like that? Or is it kind of like your mom and pop stores, or like, hey, we need, we'll keep you to fill some spots?
So the bad news is we don't have any strong partnerships like that anymore. In the early days, we had plenty of those on both sides. Because we really met with a lot of people. And that's what Brittany's going to try to forge for us again. With the evolution of technology, they're not those kinds of HR departments anymore. So now everything is internet-based. So even when you go to a job fair or whatever, and you try to forge those relationships, they'll say, just look at our website. If you see something, just apply online. And so, we have to teach our job seekers really about the whole keyword searching and tailoring your resume to each position that you see or whatever. So it's really hard for us to say, let me call Brittany up and tell her about Al, because Al is a really good fit for this company. We have a few of those relationships. We also do healthcare. So we have a few healthcare employers who say, tell me this, but we've had in the old days, employers who would say, just send me 10 resumes. Cause we know if they come from you, they're going to be good. And we really want to get back to having some of those strong professional relationships where they hold some spots for us. We did work with the census, and we had some of that going on. We worked with the last 3 censuses, but by and large, technology drives employment today.
Okay. So what does expansion look like if you were to grow outside of the city or outside of the state? Is that something that you would want to do, or is that something that you're like, nah, it's too much?
Well, I'm willing to do some different things. I am near you heard me say 29 years. And so remember, I was at IBM for 10 years. So my biggest expansion is to be taking better care of myself in the near future. But I would like to really go out with a huge legacy. I mean, I think that we have done some major things, and I'm truly proud of the legacy I will leave to my successor. And I do think that much of what we've done is replicable, that, can be done in other places. and in other sectors. And so some of the things that I would like to see is perhaps adding a few more industry sectors. I went to let me just say this. I've talked to some employers during the pandemic and asked them what they would like to see. And for one thing that they would like to see is another or more training for CDLs, for example. Like a big sector right now, if you notice, is everybody's ordering online. Brittany was talking about Amazon before we went live on this session. And so we need more drivers just for Amazon and UPS and all the mail ordering things going on. Another group is talking about all the construction that's going on. Right. And so we focus on office skills, healthcare, and hospitality. So some of the things that I might see is us expanding the sectors that we're in. We've done some solar training just before the pandemic. But really trying to find out, again, what are the in-demand sectors and what are the ways we can make impacts there.
No, it's interesting to hear you say all of these things. I actually kind of had a similar thought to this idea a few years back. I didn't think about it as a nonprofit. I thought about it as like, don't be looking at me like that, Rich. Come on,
dog. I'm messing with you.
No, but and I deserve that for messing with Brittany earlier, so it's all good. But no, it's just interesting. I never thought about establishing a nonprofit with any idea that I've had, and to hear the base of the idea that I had as a successful nonprofit for about 29 years, it really makes at least my brain open up to, what's really possible. And then to also be doing good in your own community at the same time. It's incredible.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a for-profit type of person. Or for-profit, as much profit as we could possibly make, we try to. But nonprofits are definitely, for me, I've always run into the ones where they're really, really stringent and they're very, very tedious on paperwork, on applying for grants and things like that. And it's a headache for me. So I try my best. Like, you know what? An LLC is fine. I don't need anything else. Thank you very much.
And I can relate. I have two. I was going to say children. I have 2 young adults I birthed, and they both are entrepreneurs, and they are for profit all the way, and are doing much better than I am at their young ages of 30 and 34, and so I get it. And at one point, I wondered if they would even aspire to be successful because of how hard I work. And literally I've had all-nighters working on proposals, banging it out, do it 12 o'clock, or whatever, and so, they've not had to do that, the things that I've had to do. And in the end of the day, as a nonprofit, and this is when I teach the class, some people are like, oh no, never mind. And I have to say, like on a Zoom call or whatever, don't hang up, please come back and hear the end of the story. At the end of the day, when I'm done, I don't get to take anything with me because nonprofits don't have owners. So for 29 years, all the sleepless nights and everything, all I get to say is you're welcome or thank you for the opportunity. Right. Whereas for all your hard work, if you make $1 million, you get to say, I'm gonna keep 500 and y'all can keep 500 to keep the legacy going. I don't get to do that.
Can you convert a nonprofit to a for-profit? Is that possible?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay.
No. When you dissolve a nonprofit, all you can do is give the assets of it to another nonprofit or to the government.
Oh, so to another profit person. Okay. The government. They for-profit everything.
Actually, yeah. So my church, we do food distribution, and literally a pantry, just at a small comparison, a pantry that was in the area nearby just closed down. So now we get all of their donations in addition to ours, which is nice.
I would recommend giving it to another nonprofit because give it to the government, they are for profit. So they just gonna turn around and sell it to the next person or the next nonprofit is what they're gonna do. Scam artists.
I would say that while you may not necessarily have a a pension to pull from or a bunch of stocks or anything like that.
I will get a pension.
Oh, okay.
We have a retirement plan.
Nope. My bad. I don't mean to be all big and business like that, Miss Kim. But what I was gonna say is, although it's not necessarily a for-profit that you can, do the things that an LLC or a corporation could do, I've got to imagine that. Not even imagine. It's pretty clear that for you to do what you've been doing for 3 decades means that there's a passion deep down in your soul.
Yep.
And for you to do that gratification has to be something that money can't buy.
Yep. You can't be about the Benjamins. You got to be about the business of impact. It's all about impact. And there's an article that I have kept. I bet I can go get it in 5 minutes. From the beginning, it says at a nonprofit, it's better to be a believer. So you got to believe in what you're doing. So it's not about the dollars. It's not about the cents. It's about change. It's about impact. And I'm in my basement now. And on my wall, I have in the wall, not a picture that I can move. It's in the wall. Be the change you want to see in the world.
Mm. Okay.
It's about change for me.
I like change too, even though I'm a for-profit. I like change.
And my husband is too.
He meant pocket change. That's what he meant.
And my husband is too. I told you, he's a consultant. He says to me, if you look at how many hours you put in, you probably make minimum wage. I mean, he tells me some stuff like all the time, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm good. And my pastor even had a sermon one day and says, how many of you all want to be rich? And like their hands went up all over the church. And I was just like,
So how does, if you're on the board, you said earlier that board members can't be paid. So if you're on the board, how do you work another job as well, or
board members?
Board members.
Yeah.
Or do you take yourself off the board and then so that way you can receive a salary through the employees and work as an employee of the nonprofit, or how does that work?
No, board members all work someplace else. That's why they're attorneys.
Okay.
Yeah, they have real full-time jobs.
Is there a board member or you're the executive? Is there anyone that runs it like full-time, that runs the nonprofit full-time?
Me.
So do you receive a compensation for that?
Yes, I get paid.
Okay.
So that's what I said. They can fire me. They set my salary. And that's the whole thing. Again, there are nonprofit salary surveys, like Maryland Nonprofits has a salary survey. There are other groups, Abbott's, I think, that has salary surveys. Indeed, probably even has a nonprofit salary survey. So it's not like, we can say, well, we should give her $1 million. I mean, it's going to be something that's very kind of standard across the region for where you work and the work you do. And so, within that, you look at things like, where in the region are you? How long have you been there? What kind of education do you have? What were your outcomes? So some of those factors, what was your performance that go in there as well? But then they can also fire you and say, we don't think you're effective anymore.
Was it your choice to not put yourself on the board, or is that something that has to happen when you start a nonprofit? You are not allowed to be on the board.
Well, that's funny you should say that. I told you we were Standards for Excellence accredited. So when we first got started, I knew so little. I was on the board. As I started to learn more and more, I learned that that's almost illegal in terms of, if you think about what it is. If the board hires and fires the executive director, how can the executive director be on the board?
Okay.
And so it really doesn't make sense that I took myself off immediately. And so there's always this thing about perceived, any kind of thing that's perceived as being
shady.
Shady, exactly, shady. That's the perfect word. And so no, I've not been on the board probably for 28 years.
Okay.
I can't help it. Kind of clicked in my head too that you almost have to, not even almost. You have to make sure that the donations and grants are coming in, so that way you can get paid the salary that the nonprofit has the money to pay you the salary that you and your team needs.
Exactly. And the board of directors is supposed to really be the ones that make sure you're raising the money. Because even though I'm the executive director, if you wanted to talk owners, the board really owns the nonprofit. If the nonprofit gets sued, I'm good. I just really work for the nonprofit. The board really owns it. So if we get sued, it's the board getting sued. And so we have special insurance called the Officers and Directors Liability Insurance that keeps them from losing their house.
Right. So that's how you protect your nonprofit outside of. So for people that don't know, an LLC protects you personally if you're a for-profit. If you're LLC or S corp, C corp, or whatever,
the corporation protects you, right?
You form that so that the corporation protects you from your personal assets in case you get sued. So for a nonprofit, there's just a special insurance that protects the board from being sued personally.
Correct.
Or when you're sued as a board, you don't have to give up personal assets to cover nonprofit debts.
Correct.
Okay.
But the board is held personally liable, and they're supposed to ensure that the board has the resources. I mean, that the organization has the resources it needs to operate. And oftentimes they forget that. They remember that they can fire the executive. They remember that they're supposed to govern the organization, but they often forget that they're supposed to raise funds for the organization too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Man, so did you do a lot of, I guess, research before you chose the board members that you wanted to choose?
In the beginning, I did, but once you get your initial board, they're supposed to do the work.
Oh, okay. So they go in and choose anybody to replace board members. They do that.
Yep. And so you start to lose a lot of your leadership authority, and you're kind of stuck with what they choose.
So do they not consult with you to say, hey, look, we know you picked us, but we're thinking about choosing this person. What do you think, at least? Not saying that you got to give the approval, but do they at least run it by you?
So for me, I mean, I Kim Rhim. There are thousands and thousands of nonprofits. So I Kim Rhim am on the committee that interviews potential board members. So I do get a rank. So when for potential board members, we have an application. And then they get interviewed, and then the committee that interviews them ranks them, and then the ranking goes to the full board and they vote. So I don't get to vote, but I get to interview, and
you get a say so of
a say so, right? I get to say so.
Okay.
But I don't get to vote, and once they're on the board, I'm done. I can't do anything else. I can't vote to take them off or anything like that.
Okay. So but a board is it a majority? Sorry, Brad. Is it a majority vote, or is it
it's a majority vote?
Okay.
Everything is about a quorum in the majority.
Or okay, so it doesn't have to be unanimous where everyone has to agree.
Right. No, it doesn't have to be.
Go ahead, Brad.
So just to kind of tell me if this is a good understanding, you're starting a business, you're saying, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to make money from this. This business is going to be profitable so I can grow it. That's kind of the general idea. With a nonprofit, you're really at the core saying, I really want to help some people in a particular area. And I'm going to do all this work, but I'm going to put some people around me to hold me accountable to say that I'm doing these things the right way. Is that a good way to kind of describe the differences?
Yep. I'm going to put some people around me. Now, in the perfect world, you're going to say that. I'm going to put some people around me to hold me accountable, but also to hold me up. Because they're supposed to be supporting. They're supposed to be, making sure you have the resources. So it's not just holding you accountable. They're supposed to be your go-to, your sounding board. You do your strategic plan with them. They make sure you're raising money. They open doors of opportunity. They're out networking for you. They're out looking for jobs too. They're out looking for people too. I mean, so literally, those Verizon commercials where the network is out there. That's my network. They're supposed to be, I shouldn't, I'm in there doing the work and I'm over my shoulder and there's my network. So in a perfect world, those are your that's your posse.
Awesome. Did you guys have any other questions?
I have no questions.
We've covered a lot. Thank you for coming out. We've covered a lot.
I'm legitimately honored to have an opportunity to sit in this part of this conversation. This is amazing. I'm gonna be looking for you in March, Miss Kim. I'm gonna be looking for you in March.
In March.
Hey, Brad, you got something on your nose, man.
Is it
wipe your nose a little bit?
Is it brown?
Man, I don't even like that. I don't even know what he's trying to imply. But what's going on in March?
I'm confused too.
In March is over on What's Happening on my podcast. We have our Women Making History series. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna be looking for you in March, Miss Kim.
I'd love to see you in March.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. I'm trying not to die on air, but anyhow.
Please don't die.
I'm trying. I'm trying to keep it together. Honestly,
we don't have insurance to cover you.
I just need you. I need you guys to understand. In the middle of this, I was drinking my water in this random plastic piece. I don't know where it came from. Shot up my straw. It was in my water cup. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Oh,
wow!
So I really, literally, almost did.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But, right? But that's neither here nor there.
Is that a fundraiser?
Hey, do me a favor. Send them cookies tonight. No.
Anywho, but thank you so much, Kim, for joining us. I know that in my interview with you, we talked a lot about just the passion in bringing people on and being surrounded by people who actually care about what they're doing. And when I originally met you, it felt like the perfect marriage of a job and a career path for me, just given the fact that I was doing the same thing with my mother and was unable to kind of continue that between my mental health and just the remoteness and the 500 miles of trying to serve a community I no longer live in. Mm-hmm. So meeting you and being able to take those skills and help the people that I live with, my neighbors, my family members, essentially, has been such a great journey. I look forward to many years of working with and for you.
Thank you very much.
And it's been a pleasure. And we thank you so much for joining us.
So thanks again for having me, guys.
Awesome. And this episode, like every other episode, is sponsored by RDI Financial.
Gang.
This was sponsored by a for-profit.
A for-profit.
For-profit.
Help broke people being broke.
Exactly. So we accept donations at the training source. From for-profits.
All the time.
From for-profits, exactly. Mm-hmm. And for all things Unapologetically Black, you can follow us and subscribe and all that good stuff. You can listen to us on all streaming platforms. You can find us on all social media platforms. Honestly, same for the training source. They are also on Facebook. They are on Twitter and Instagram. So LinkedIn. You can find them on all of that. Brad, you can find Brad on What's Happening.
What's happening?
What's up, right? But thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay unapologetically Black. Have a good night.
Thank you all.